But the official request was made on the 6th of March. There is no question about that. And the detailed arguments were laid out on the 6th of March at the ministerial meeting.
Chris Law.
Thank you. It's not gone too well for the Secretary of State, is it? Madam Deputy Speaker, environmental charities across these islands have written to the Secretary of State calling for him not to block the Scottish Deposit Return Scheme. Now, as we know, there are successful schemes across many other countries, and the British Soft Drinks Association, whose members include Coca-Cola, and the iron brew maker AG Bar, call for it to go ahead as planned. So what on earth is the future Baron von Jack thinking of when he's ignoring these calls and threatening to block the scheme, particularly when his own government and other UK nations will follow Scotland's lead and introduce their own scheme from 2025?
Secretary of State.
Well, I'm not sure there's been much joined-up thinking on the questions here, because this is, again, you're going to hear the deposit return scheme. I have suggested it should be paused. I think a UK-wide solution is right. I think recycling is absolutely right. But I agree with the Chief Executive of Tesco, Britain's largest retailer, when he says this is not the right scheme. It will be inflationary. I have at this dispatch box before said 12 bottles of water, in Scottish water in Aldi, currently costs £1.59. Under this scheme, they will go to £3.99, or even higher if there's a price put on top by the consumer. So £2.40 of that could be reclaimed, but the consumer will also pay a extra cost that is put on the producer. And the producer will be clear about that. And I spoke to Coca-Cola, we met with them. They said it would be 2p on a can, it would be 5p on a bottle passed on to the consumer that they couldn't reclaim, and higher figures from other companies, including one brewer. The last point, Madam Deputy Speaker, but one of those small brewers said to us it would be £1.40 they'd have to add to a bottle of beer, plus the 20p. So it's very inflationary, it's very bad for the consumer's shopping basket, and that is why I think we need to pause and get a scheme that works for the whole United Kingdom.
David Mundell.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and what a pleasure to see you in the chair for Scottish questions. Can I add my congratulations to Humza Yousaf on becoming First Minister of Scotland and recognise the inclusive and historic nature of the appointment. But does my right honourable friend agree with me that, based on the experience of our constituents, he'll have to considerably up his game in his new role, given that as Transport Minister he came to Dumfries in 2016 to hold a transport summit, and 7 years later precisely 0 of the commitments given that day have been delivered?
State.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think he not only did he fail in the transport brief, as we know from his opponent, who took 48% of the vote, almost half the votes, that he also failed in his other briefs on justice and in health.
Bob Blackman.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I join with others in congratulating the new First Minister. However, the Barnett formula, by which money is devolved to Scotland, has existed for more than 40 years. And I wonder if he's received any representations from the Scottish Government as to reviewing that formula.
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, at the moment we are in discussions with the Scottish Government about a review of the financial fiscal framework. That's a review that's been in train for some time, and the conclusions will be coming shortly.
Robert Miller.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I too congratulate Mr Yousaf on his appointment as First Minister in Scotland. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that actually the effectiveness of devolution arrangements was demonstrated in the use of the Scotland Act, and Section 35 in particular, to block the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, specifically because it impacted on the effective operation of UK law across the UK?
Secretary of State.
Yes, Madam Deputy Speaker. I mean, I've heard the new First Minister say that it was anti-devolution to block a bill that had been passed by the Scottish Parliament. But Section 35 exists for that very reason. When a bill is passed by the Scottish Parliament, and if they didn't pass it, we couldn't block it. When a bill is passed that has adverse effects on GB-wide legislation, it exists to stop that bill going for royal assent, so those adverse effects can be dealt with.
Shadow Secretary of State Ian Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's great to see you back with us in the chair, and welcome back, particularly to Scottish questions. There's been a seismic victory, an historic victory this week, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Scotland football team last night beat Spain at Hampden, so we send all our congratulations to them. And can I also start by echoing the Secretary of State's congratulations to the new First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf. The Secretary of State rightly challenged him to engage reverse gear on independence, but I think he may have already crashed that car. The new First Minister, of course, inherits a divided party and the SNP's dreadful record on public services, but what he does not inherit is Nicola Sturgeon's mandate. At the Holyrood election, the ballot paper said Nicola Sturgeon for First Minister, not Humza Yousaf. So does the Secretary of State agree with me and Humza Yousaf himself when he rightly called for a UK general election after the Prime Minister changed twice last year? And does he agree that a new First Minister with no mandate means there should not only be a general election now, but a Scottish election now too?
Secretary of State.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, what I'd say is that there is a precedent for political parties voting in new leaders who then assume office. We had Henry McLeish replace Donald Dewar, Jack McConnell replaced Henry McLeish, Gordon Brown replaced Tony Blair, even Nicola Sturgeon replaced her, at the time, great friend and mentor, her was not mine, Alex Salmond. So, yes, it would be hypocritical of me to say otherwise, because last year, of course, I defended the change of Prime Ministers, and I think it's hypocritical of Humza Yousaf to suggest that then that we should have done it, and now deafening silence.
Ian Murray.
The answer shows that both the Conservative Party and the SNP are both democracy deniers, Madam Deputy Speaker. In January, Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK government... Oh, they don't like it up 'em. In January, Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK government announced that they had signed a memorandum of understanding with biotech and Moderna to conduct trials into vaccines that can attack cancer cells. These innovative treatments could be a lifeline from those with terminal cancers like David Williamson from Glasgow, who contacted me and others to plead to be accepted onto those trials. However, because David lives in Scotland, as it stands, these trials are due to take place in England only. He's written to both the UK and Scottish Health Secretaries but failed to receive a response. David doesn't want to die, knowing that there could be a treatment that could help him. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that potentially life-saving treatment should be available across the UK, and will he work to resolve this matter urgently for David and thousands of others?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, yeah, this is a very serious issue. My sympathies are with David and his family. I know that he has written to the Health Secretary. I'm a great believer that our NHS is reciprocal across the United Kingdom, and I will organise a meeting for the honourable member with SOS, Secretary of State Steve Barclay, at the earliest opportunity.
SNP spokesperson Dr Philippa Whitfoot.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I too welcome you to the Chair on Scottish Questions, and would join myself with the comments of the Labour shadow on celebrating Scotland's win. Just a pity that people couldn't watch it on terrestrial Scottish television. I would just point out that devolved governments have led on many innovative policies, such as the carrier bag charge in Wales and the smoking ban and minimum unit pricing of alcohol in Scotland, with the UK government following years later, if at all. The attacks on the policy at the time show that had it existed, the Internal Market Act would inevitably have been used to block minimum unit pricing, which has recently been credited with a 13% drop in alcohol-related deaths in Scotland. Even the EU single market allows policy divergence to improve public health and the environment. So why are there no such derogations in the Internal Market Act?
Secretary of State.
Well, I'd say to the Honourable Lady, I'll pick up her first point, just because we don't want the grievance factory to say that it was the, as I've seen on social media today, it was the English government blocking the Scotland watching the game against, I said in social media, the game against Spain last night that we were so victorious in. But because the Scottish Football Association sold the rights to the football match, and it was their decision. On the second point, there are opportunities for derogations, exemptions within the UK internal market, and we did it in the case of plastic cutlery, because the same proposal was coming forward in the rest of the UK 6 months after the Scottish Government. The schemes worked together, and a derogation for 6 months worked. But what derogations don't work when you have different schemes in different parts of the United Kingdom, some including glass, some not, and you have producers having to sign up to different schemes that have a huge cost implication. We don't think that is the right way to go forward.
Dr. Philippa Whitford.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's funny how differences in the different nations worked fine before Brexit. One has to wonder why the UK market doesn't seem able to cope right now. So is he planning to repeatedly hold back the devolved governments to avoid making his government look bad, or is he just going to seek every single chance to attack devolution and enforce Westminster rule?
Secretary of State.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chief Executive of Tesco, who I've quoted earlier in these questions, who's the largest retailer in the United Kingdom, made the very good point yesterday in the paper that there is one drinks industry across the United Kingdom and we should have one solution to the recycling problem.
Robbie Moore.
Number 2, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will answer questions 2, 3 and 9 together. My assessment is that the union is strong, as is support for the union. People want to see their government delivering. Oh yes, strong, very, very strong. People want to see their governments delivering, and this is what we're doing, from levelling up to tackling the cost of living and working with the Scottish Government and delivering free ports, investment zones and city and region growth deals.
Robbie Moore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Opinion polls clearly show that the people of Scotland want the UK and Scottish governments to work together to take Scotland forward rather than going back to the divisions of the past. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that the new SNP leader should focus on Scotland's economy, the NHS, schools, creating jobs, rather than going back to another divisive independence referendum?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the answer is that my honourable friend is absolutely right, and I would call on the new First Minister to seize this opportunity to do things differently. And rather than confrontation, let's have collaboration for a change.
Kevin Foster.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'm delighted to hear the Secretary of State's assessment. And does he agree growing support for the Union shows people across Scotland are seeing the advantages of working together as we face challenges like the war in Ukraine and the cost of living crisis, rather than following the separatist path of division?
Secretary of State.
Indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker, as we've seen with free ports, and we will see with investment zones, as we've seen with city and region growth deals, when we work together, we are truly better together.
Scott Benton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would my right honourable friend agree that by extending our cost of living support and taking measures to deliver long-term sustainable growth whilst reducing inflation, the Chancellor's budget strengthened the Union by delivering for all parts of it?
Secretary of State.
Yes, Madam Deputy Speaker, the cost of living support has been a total of £94 billion, the package, and that's an average for every household in the United Kingdom of £3,300.
Now go to the chair of the Select Committee, Pete Wishart.
Chair, and it's great to see you in the chair once again. Can I say to the Secretary of State that the Union's in trouble because there's no longer a case for the Union, and we know that because a significant number of under-50s now support independence. But perhaps he could tell us what the Union's greatest achievement has been in the course of the past few years. Is it a Brexit that Scotland doesn't support? Is it high-rise energy prices in energy-rich Scotland? Or perhaps it's been run by a bunch of Tories that most of Scotland rejected?
Secretary of State.
Well, I noticed the honourable gentleman didn't quote any opinion polls to me this time. Nor when he mentioned Brexit did he call for another referendum, a result that was 52% to 48%.
Order. Now, Scottish questions are very important. There's too much chatting going on. There are subtleties in the questions and the answers that people are missing. Secretary of State.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I was trying to give the very subtle answer that when the Brexit referendum was 52% to 48%, the honourable gentleman wanted another referendum. The result of the leadership of election was 52 to 48, and suddenly he's very happy with it. And he loves to quote opinion polls to me. He didn't quote any today. I can't think why. All I would say is the people of Scotland are seeing the strength of this United Kingdom, whether it's through free ports, whether it's through investment zones, whether it's through city and region growth deals. The desire to stay in the United Kingdom gets stronger and stronger.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And yes, it is a delight to see you back, and I hope you did enjoy the football last night. You're not too hoarse. I would like to also welcome the First Minister and congratulate him on his elevation to the post. But given that 13 of the last 15 opinion polls in Scotland have favoured no over yes, the most recent in the Scotsman put support to independence for only 39%. In a by-election in my constituency in Edinburgh West, council by-election, my own party won 57%, and yes parties could barely get 20%. Given those facts, does the Secretary of State think that the new First Minister should focus on the issues which are important to the people of Scotland? The NHS, education and inflation rather than independence.
Absolutely, Madam Deputy Speaker. And we know from the judgment in November of the UK Supreme Court that the Constitution is entirely reserved to the United Kingdom Government. And therefore, I would ask the Scottish Government, the new Scottish Government, to do the day job, to focus on crime, to focus on drug deaths, to focus on the health service and to focus on education. That's what devolution is about.
Geraint Davis.
Pleasure to see you back. Question 4. Thank you.
Secretary of State. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I also start by congratulating the Scotland team in their triumph last night, and also to the new First Minister of Scotland. The United Kingdom Government is responsible for heavy rail infrastructure in Wales. Conversely, this is a devolved responsibility in Scotland, so the Scottish Government receives Barnett-based funding. This is consistent with the funding arrangements for all other policy areas reserved in Wales, but devolved in Scotland.
Geraint Davis.
In other words, Wales has only had 1.5% of rail enhancement investment for the UK for 5% of the population, while Scotland gets 8% for its 8% of the population. And that's why the wages in Wales are something like 73% of UK average compared to 92%. So will you give an undertaking that Wales should get its fair 5% share of HS2, £5 billion, in the same way as Scotland will get its 8%, £8 billion? And will you raise this with his colleagues at Cabinet?
Minister.
The Welsh Government has actually received a significant uplift in its Barnett-based funding due to UK Government spending on HS2. I'd also point out that the UK Government has committed £2 billion for the period 2019 to 2024, more than double the £900 million invested between 2014 and 2019.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's fantastic to see you in the chair for Scotland Questions. Can I echo the comments across the House congratulating the new First Minister on his election? With regard to rail funding, cross-border rail links like extending the Borders Railway down to Carlisle are vital to people and businesses in the north of England and Scotland. Would my honourable friend agree that implementation of the Union Connectivity Review recommendations is vital in this regard, and can he give an update on this?
Minister.
Well, I pay tribute to the honourable member for his hard work with the other cross-border MPs, including myself, to deliver the extension of the Borders Railway to Hawick, Newcastleton and on to Carlisle. I was delighted to see the funding for the feasibility study in the Borderlands growth deal, and we hope that the work in this study will get underway very, very soon.
Tamarjeet Singh Desai.
Pleasure to see you back in the chair, Madam Deputy Speaker. Congratulations to Hamza Youssef on becoming the First Minister. And number 5, please, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Scotland Office Ministers have regular discussions with ministerial colleagues regarding the cost of living support. At the recent budget, the Chancellor announced additional support measures for households and families across Scotland and indeed all parts of the United Kingdom. This included maintaining the energy price guarantee until June this year, which is in addition to the previous announced energy bills discount scheme. We've also made changes to universal credit to help people get back to work.
Tamarjeet Singh Dassi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of my Slough constituents are struggling, and likewise in Scotland, where over a quarter of households, 613,000, are struggling to pay their energy bills and are living in fuel poverty. And the situation is likely to worsen with increasing inflation and further potential energy price hikes. So does the Minister accept that the Scottish people deserve much better, and rather than stoking culture wars or more sleeve or obsessing about another independence referendum, we need both the UK and Scottish governments to work together and focus on tackling the continued cost of living crisis?
Madam Deputy Speaker, this government continues to do everything it possibly can to support the most vulnerable in society. Taken together with all the government's efforts to help families and households with higher costs, the total support to an average household is £3,300 over the current year. It is right that the government continues to provide cost of living support while sticking to its plan to avoid added unnecessary inflationary pressures.
Alan Cairns.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's so good to see you back in the chair. Is my honourable friend aware that the deposit return scheme that the Scottish Government plan to introduce later this year will have a significant impact and cost on brewers, pubs and distilleries? Now, whereas we strongly support the objectives of the scheme, does my right honourable friend support the calls that the Scottish Government should rethink the implementation in order to reduce the cost on consumers ultimately?
Minister.
My right honourable friend makes a very important point. The Scottish Government's deposit return scheme does not work, and it's very important we find a solution that works across all parts of the United Kingdom. We should reflect on the comments of Tesco's chief executive yesterday, which said that the Scottish Government's deposit return scheme was not fit for purpose, risks driving up prices, and that there should be a UK-wide scheme.
Shadow Minister Liz Twist.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, across Scotland, just like in my constituency, the cost of living crisis continues to make life difficult for so many families. Inflation now at 10.4%, with the British Retail Consortium reporting that food inflation is above 15%. And interest rates have been increased for the 11th consecutive time. Now, the Chancellor's budget was yet another missed opportunity for the government to take the action needed to tackle the cost of living. Does the Minister agree with me that the government should have implemented a proper windfall tax and used the money raised to help struggling families?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, no, I do not agree. This government is taking the measures necessary to support households, families and businesses across Scotland and all parts of the United Kingdom. And I think the additional windfall tax that she proposes is not something which we support.
Thank you. That concludes Scottish questions. And before we commence Prime Minister's questions, I'd like to point out, as ever, that live subtitles and a British Sign Language interpretation of proceedings are available to watch on parliamentlive.tv. That's very kind of people to say shh and to be a little bit quiet. I am aware that only those watching the British Sign Language interpretation will be able to hear what I was saying. We now come to questions to the Prime Minister, Sir Bill Wiggin.
Question number one.
Well, Deputy Prime Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I've been asked to reply on behalf of my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, who is attending the funeral of Baroness Betty Boothroyd. I'm sure the whole House would want to join me in paying tribute to Baroness Boothroyd, the first female Speaker of the House, and our thoughts and prayers are with her family.
I'm sure the whole House does join in sending our thoughts and prayers about Baroness Boothroyd, whom we all held in very high esteem. Sir Bill Wiggin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Phosphates leaching into the River Wye could be stopped by proven phosphate stripping technology attached to anaerobic digesters. But Herefordshire Council's bypass-hating Green and Independent group won't support or engage despite a moratorium on house building. What can he do to save our river and remove the Council from such a vital, strategic and environmental responsibility?
Deputy Prime Minister.
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The River Wye obviously is of huge importance to nature. We're taking action to tackle pollution and raise farming standards. He'll know about the Environment Agency's farm inspection capacity and catchment-sensitive farming advice programme, and I defer to his technical knowledge in this area. I'm sure he'll want to make submissions to the local authority.
Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Angela Raynor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and welcome back into the chair. And can I share the Deputy Prime Minister's words on our Baroness and our thoughts with her family today? And I'm sure the whole House will join me also in paying tribute to Paul O'Grady after his sad death was announced today. He was a national treasure and a true Northern star, and he will be greatly missed. Madam Deputy Speaker, this week the government announced their so-called antisocial behaviour policy. It's only taken 13 years. And look, I'll give him some credit. The Deputy Prime Minister knows firsthand the misery caused by thugs and their intimidating behaviour, lurking with menace, exploding in fits of rage, creating a culture of fear, and maybe even, I don't know, throwing things. So can I ask him, under his new antisocial behaviour, does he think more bullies will be brought to justice?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I can reassure the House I've never called anyone scum. But if the Right Honourable Lady is serious about standing up for communities and people who suffer at the scourge of antisocial behaviour, she'd back our plan to deal more swiftly with these issues, to make sure that we ban drugs beyond the conventional ones, give police the powers they need, and if they really want to protect the public, they'll back our plans for parole reform to make sure the murderers, the terrorists, the child killers are not allowed out free to threaten other people, and reintroduce the ministerial veto that side took away.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to see the ministerial code being introduced and adhered to on that side of the House, because it's not just his department where antisocial behaviour is running out of control. It's happening across the country. Police officers disappearing from our streets, replaced by criminals, plaguing our towns and leaving people feeling unsafe. The truth is that the Conservatives are missing in action in the fight against crime. So can he tell his constituents and the public why, after 13 years of his party in government, there are now 6,000 fewer neighbourhood police officers on Britain's streets?
Madam Deputy Speaker, she really does have a brass neck, because they voted against our funding of police recruitment and the 20,000 extra police officers. But what I will tell her and the whole House is crime is lower than it was under the last Labour government. Violent crime is halved. Reoffending is 7 percentage points lower. And if she really wants to stand up for the public and the victims of crime, they should back our bill to protect victims and protect the most vulnerable from serious killers, rapists and terrorists.
Madam Deputy Speaker, no one believes that there's more police on the streets and no one feels safer. Neighbourhood policing has gone down and not up. Let's talk about crime. He knows, as well as I do, that neighbourhood police can help prevent antisocial behaviour and knife crime. But trusted local police are also crucial to protecting women. Women feel unsafe on Britain's streets, always looking over our shoulder as we hurry to our front door. So can he tell me, under his watch as Justice Secretary, what is the charge rate for rape?
Can I address all of those elements of that? And first of all say that the issue of rape and serious sexual violence against women is one of our top priorities. She asked what we're doing about it. Since 2019, police referrals of cases are doubled. CPS charges have doubled. She asked on my watch what has happened. the volume of convictions in rape cases increased by 2/3. And if she really wants to protect vulnerable women, whether it's rapists or from rapists or other serious crimes, they will back our parole reforms, which will mean ministers able to prevent them being released onto the public and cause more threats.
Angela Raynor.
He says that rape conviction has gone up. What he really means is that 300 women will be raped today, while he boasts about an increase of 0.5%. He hasn't answered my question, Madam Deputy Speaker, because he's too ashamed of the answer. 1.6% of rapists face being charged for their crime. 1.6%. Let that sink in. A woman goes through the worst experience of her life. She summons up the courage to relive that horrendous experience, to tell the police in detail about her assault. But she only has a 1.6% chance of action being taken. Over 98% of rapists will never see the inside of a courtroom, let alone a prison. And the rest of those brave women, Madam Deputy Speaker, they keep looking over their shoulders and hope the perpetrator doesn't choose tonight to take their revenge for reporting the incident to the police. In the last 13 years of the Tory government, more than 500,000 cases of rape have been recorded by the police. But the charge rate for those attacks have collapsed. He has served under 5 Tory Prime Ministers and had 3 years as Justice Minister. And on his watch, rapists are left to roam the streets. So will he apologise to those victims who will never get justice because of his failures?
I'll first of all say to the Right Honourable Lady, the conviction rate measured by the CPS, the leader of the Labour Party used to be in charge of the CPS, he might want to point this out. Well, actually, the conviction rate has gone up. It is now at 69%. We are doing much more to support the victims of rape when they come forward. Well, they're talking a good game. In fact, we have quadrupled funding for victims since 2010. And if she looks at the latest data, the time it's taken from charge to completion of a rape case has come down by 10 weeks or 70% in the last 3 months alone. She should get her facts straight, particularly when talking about such a sensitive issue.
Angela Raynor.
Madam Deputy Speaker, he won't apologise for the government failures on charge rates, and 69% of 1.6%. Is that really something to boast about? Let me ask him about an issue which is directly his responsibility. On his watch, rape survivors are waiting on average more than 3 years for their cases to come to court. The Honourable Member talked about 10-week reduction. 3 years, Deputy Leader. 3 years. So 10 weeks is not anything to boast about. Those 3 years from the day of the assault to the final day of court. Is it any wonder that from April till September last year, 175 trials for rape and other serious sexual offences have had to be dropped because the victim could no longer cope with the delay? So let me ask him, when will he apologise to all those women denied justice because of his failure to sort the court backlog?
Well, she ignores the impact on the court backlog of the pandemic or indeed the CBA strike. But let me tell her what we're doing. We've quadrupled funding for victims since 2010, quadrupled the funding provided by the last Labour government. We launched the 24/7 support line so that when those victims of that appalling crime come forward, they get the support they need. We've increased the number of independent sexual violence advisors to over 1,000, and we're making sure that women that suffer this appalling crime can give pre-recorded evidence in court. We're doing everything that we can, and as I said, the rates are coming down, and we will keep taking action in this area. Is she really? If the Labour Party were really serious about this, they wouldn't have voted against longer sentences for dangerous, violent and sexual offenders in the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act, and she will get behind our Victims and Prisoner Bill today.
Angela Raynor.
Madam Deputy Speaker, not a word of apology, no sense of responsibility and not even a shred of shame. The reality is while people in Britain feel more and more unsafe, he seems to spend all of his time trying to save his own job and none of his time on his actual job. And it's not just me that thinks so. The Prime Minister clearly doesn't trust him to deal with antisocial behaviour because he's given that job to the Levelling Up Secretary. The way things are going, and reports are to be believed, this might be your last PMQs. So let's look at the highlights. A criminal justice on its knees, the largest court backlog on record, rape victims waiting for justice, and through it all he managed to rack up 24 formal complaints from his own civil servants. So can he say today, will he walk before he's pushed?
Madam Deputy Speaker, one thing never changes. She always comes with the usual bluster and political opportunism. Let me tell the Right Honourable Lady what we've been doing, what I've been doing this week. We've delivered new legislation to support the victims of crime, including rape, and to protect the public. We've delivered a plan to stamp out antisocial behaviour, and we've supported families with their energy bills. What's she done? What have the Labour front bench done? They tried to block our small boats bill, and that's the difference between them and us. We deliver for Britain. She likes to play her political games.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is wonderful to see you in your place. As my right honourable friend will be aware, the Thames Freeport was recently given the final go-ahead to become fully operational, creating thousands of jobs and attracting millions in inward investment. Will my right honourable friend join me in congratulating the team behind the bid and encourage businesses and investors from across the South East, indeed across the world, to take a closer look at the fantastic opportunities that exist in Thurrock? And will he work with local education providers to ensure my constituents have the skills needed to take up these fantastic opportunities?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend? I certainly do support and pay tribute to all of those who have made the new Thames Freeport possible, with its potential to deliver over 12,000 new jobs. I look forward to seeing the local community and the wider communities benefit from the tax benefits, the customs zones, and we'll see how these plans progress. And again, I think it's good news to see the communities in Basildon and Thurrock taking full advantage of the Brexit opportunities.
Deputy Leader of the SNP, Murray Black.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I also wish to send my warm regards to the family of Paul O'Grady, the legendary drag queen, for all he's done for my community. I also want to congratulate Humza Yousaf as he becomes First Minister of Scotland. As the first Scots, Asian and Muslim to hold such an office, I'm sure the whole House will send his warm regards. Now, in recent days, video footage has emerged of the former Chancellor and the former chair of the 1922 committee offering their services for £60,000 on top of their MP's salary. The former Health Secretary offered his wisdom for £10,000 a day.
Going once.
Can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister, when he is inevitably booted out of office, what will his going rate be?
Well, can I welcome her to the chamber? The system of declarations is there to ensure transparency and accountability, and of course the Conservatives backed tightening up those rules to make sure that there couldn't be any lobbying. But can I also join with, except to take her up on her tribute to the new First Minister of Scotland. The Prime Minister spoke to him last night. We welcome him to his place, and of course the government will want to work constructively with him in the best interest of the people of Scotland.
Murray Black. During a cost of living crisis, as his colleagues eye up barrels of cash from fake companies, it's the people across these aisles that are being led by donkeys, and they're sitting on those. Now, the former Health Secretary also said that he would impart his wisdom for £1,500 an hour. Most nurses earn little above £15 an hour. Who does the Deputy Prime Minister think's best value for money and for the public?
Well, I'm delighted that the majority of their health unions have accepted the pay settlement. We think that that's absolutely right. And she raises the issue, and of course we've worked with on a cross-party basis to curb the limits on second earnings. I noticed the benches on this side are curiously quiet. Is that because there's 10 shadow cabinet members on their benches who are taking earnings? In particular, the shadow foreign secretary looks like he certainly doesn't want to be under the limelight. He's got earned second earnings from 40 different sources. I don't think they can talk about it. And as far as the Honourable Lady is concerned, we've done everything we can to make sure there's transparency and accountability.
Jack Burton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's very good to see you back in this place. Stoke-on-Trent has been announced as one of the Levelling Up partnerships, and this is on top of the investment we've already received through programmes like the Levelling Up Fund. And this is being delivered thanks to Conservatives working together in government and on the City Council, led by the formidable councillor Abby Brown. So would my right honourable friend agree with me, if people want to continue to see the levelling up of opportunities in Stoke-on-Trent, they should vote Conservative in the local elections in May?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. And after years of neglect under Labour, it's now the Conservatives, in no small part thanks to my honourable friend, who have been levelling up in Stoke-on-Trent. £11 million from the Shared Prosperity Fund, £12 million from the Levelling Up Fund, £4 million from the Regional Growth Fund, and that's supporting over 500 jobs and £28 million of private investment. That's the difference for the people of Stoke under a Conservative government.
Sir Geoffrey Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, the Secretary of State told us that the Security Service, MI5, have increased the terrorism threat level in Northern Ireland to severe. Responsibility for dealing with terrorism and national security rests with the Government of the United Kingdom, including in Northern Ireland. Will the Deputy Prime Minister assure me and the people of Northern Ireland that the Government will provide the Police Service of Northern Ireland and the Security Service with the resources that they need to counter this serious terrorist threat?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? He's absolutely right. Of course, the threat level is kept under constant review. We take into account a range of factors. He'll be very familiar with those. It's disappointing that the threat level has gone up, but I think it is worth also saying that it has been in significant decline in terms of the number of Northern Ireland-related terrorist attacks and attempted attacks since the peak of the violence in 2009-2010. Nonetheless, of course, we will make sure all the resources available to the PSNI and the public are reminded to remain vigilant and report any suspicious behaviour or activity.
James Grundy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In my recent local survey as to whether Lee should break away from Wigan Council, I am very pleased to say that so far the survey shows 90% in favour of amendment, with only 3% opposed. Please, before you call for a second referendum, let me finish the question. Does my right honourable friend agree that in the 50th year of our campaign for our town's independence, that this is the year to get Lexit done?
My honourable friend campaigns with typical gusto. I think he knows that changing the boundaries at local authority level is subject to an independent process, but I will ensure he gets a meeting with the Minister for Local Government so he can further discuss the aspirations for Lake.
Cat Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Despite Royal Mail posting record profits, management are threatening to put it into administration. Can I ask what conversations government is having with Royal Mail and what it's doing to protect the Universal Postal Service?
Deputy Prime Minister.
It's an incredibly difficult time. Can I thank her for a question? Obviously, the pandemic has had a particular impact, but we're working very closely to make sure we can continue the service, and I'll make sure she gets a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss her concerns further.
Mark Eastwood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Speaker. On behalf of the people of Dewsbury, I would also like to pay tribute to Dewsbury's greatest daughter, Betty Boothroyd. She was sorely missed. This week I visited Ravenhall School in Dewsbury and Hollybank School in Mirfield. Both do amazing work teaching children with special educational needs and disabilities. However, there is disparity in SEND standards in mainstream schools within my constituency. Would my right honourable friend join me in thanking the teachers and staff at Ravensall and Hollybank for everything they do, and could he also outline how we can ensure all our children are given the best chance in life regardless of which school they go to?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend and pay tribute to the teachers and the staff at both schools, Ravensall and Hollybank, for the amazing work they do. It's a very difficult and challenging job and incredibly important for the life chances of those children affected. He'll know that in March we published the SEND and Alternative Provision Improvement Plan with new national standards, and that's backed up by an increased specialist provision locally with £2.6 billion going into it, and that includes opening 33 new special schools with a further 49 in the pipeline.
Douglas Chubb.
While the Prime Minister is absent, I hope he later gets the chance to watch the BBC dramatisation, The Brinksmat Robbery, which was held in the 1980s, where the police team assigned to the recovery of this gold only got back half of the gold that was stolen. That sum pales into insignificance compared with the measly 1% from the £1 billion of business grants that was lost to the fraud issued by the Prime Minister under his watch when he was Chancellor. The fingerprints show that this massive fraud now lies at 10 Downing Street. To quote your former fraud minister, Lord Bolton, when will this government get its act together and step up the recovery efforts on behalf of the taxpayer?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, the instance of fraud have become much more complex with the online instance, but he will have noted the massive increase in funding for tackling fraud in the recent budget, and we're confident that will give us the resources we need to tackle this often invisible but very damaging crime.
Sir Robert Neal.
The Deputy Prime Minister will know that stroke is the greatest cause of adult disability in this country and costs our economy some £26 billion, never mind destroying lives. Last year I met Dr John Stevens, who was unable even to sit up unaided after a stroke, but because of emergency thrombectomy procedure is now back at work as a GP in the NHS. Sadly, only 30% of eligible patients actually get thrombectomies. Will the Deputy Prime Minister agree that we need greatly to increase the rollout of thrombectomy procedures, and would he perhaps, in the run-up to World Thrombectomy Day next month, join me in visiting a thrombectomy centre, see at first hand the difference it can make to lives and to getting people back into meaningful and productive work and enjoyment?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend? He's been a dedicated champion for stroke survivors. I know from my own constituency how debilitating that can be and the impact it has on the wider families. NHS England are committed to increasing the delivery of mechanical thrombectomy, including the expansion of local services and local capital investment, and I'm sure we can arrange for a health minister to join him on a visit as he requests.
Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In a shocking article in Surrey Live last year, it was reported that staff at a GP practice in Walton were left in tears and crumbling under pressure due to the increased workload caused by staff shortages. Is it any wonder when there are 850 fewer GPs across the country since 2019? So what does the Deputy Prime Minister say to those patients left in pain and staff left in tears, including in his own constituency, due to this government's failed promise to recruit more GPs?
Well, can I say to her, any abuse against any GP in any practice across the country is absolutely wrong. We have to have zero tolerance of it. What I would just say to her is we've seen a large increase in GP appointments, over 29 million carried out since the start of the year. We're improving access to general practice with more support staff, also the technology, so more state-of-the-art telephone systems. The number of GPs in training is at record levels, and we're investing £1.5 billion to create 50 million more appointments a year by 2024.
If we go a bit faster, we'll get everybody in. Scott Benton.
Mr. Speaker, Since 2019, this government has provided well over £300 million in extra funding for projects in Blackpool. However, there is always room for more. The Bond Street and Weather areas of my constituency are among the most deprived in the country and have been long forgotten by the Labour-led council. The government has already provided £600,000 in funding for a feasibility project with a view to delivering a £30 million regeneration package for these areas. Will the government look closely at the business case to see how this transformational project can be delivered for those communities?
Order, before the Deputy Prime Minister answers that, can everyone else with a prepared question just cut it in half? Just do the question. Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There is no one more tenacious in campaigning for Blackpool than the Honourable Gentleman. I've seen it firsthand when I visited with him. I'm pleased that we delivered with the Levelling Up Secretary the £40 million of funding to relocate the Magistrates' Court and to allow the County Court complex to move. And I know that the Levelling Up Secretary will want to work with him on the regeneration aspirations for the future.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A little girl in my constituency, only 9 years old, developed a bacterial infection just before Christmas, but thereafter very distressing symptoms occurred. OCD, she has intrusive thoughts, she hasn't washed, dressed or properly eaten since Christmas. We believe this to be Pan's Panda, and although health has evolved and I am seeking support for her, part of the lottery and the antipsychotic medication that is often given in this condition, despite the fact that broad-based antibiotics have been proven to work, is because the UK, no part of the UK, has implemented World Health Organisation ICD-11. Will the government commit to looking at this so that other children across the UK don't need to suffer in such a way?
Can I thank the Honourable Lady for raising what seems like a very an awful case, and my heart goes out to the family involved. If she'd like to write with me about it, I'll make sure she gets a full answer and a meeting with the Minister if that's required.
Caroline Nooks.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Georgia Harrison is an incredibly brave young woman who only got justice when she was a victim of revenge porn because she could prove that the perpetrator intended to cause her distress. Most victims can't, and perpetrators are using platforms to use revenge porn for financial gain. That's not covered in the legislation. Will my right honourable friend commit to looking at the case studies Georgia has compiled and reviewing this legislation to strengthen it and make it more effective?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Can I thank the Honourable Lady, my honourable friend, my right honourable friend, for all that she's done in this area. I know that there have been a considerable number of changes to the Online Safety Bill, not least because of her forensic attention to detail. They will include the creation of a new base offence of sharing intimate images without consent that don't require proof of an intention to cause distress. And of course the government also supports the Revenge Porn Helpline, which offers free and confidential advice. If there are any further changes that she thinks need to be made, very happy to look at them with her.
Sir Chris Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I don't know whether the Deputy Prime Minister ever met Lily Savage or has ever spent a night out at the Royal Vauxhall Tavern, but Lily was... I can take him sometime if he wants to go. I think that was a yes, actually, yeah. But Lily was performing at the height of the AIDS crisis in 1987. When police officers raided the pub, arrested her amongst others. They were wearing rubber gloves because supposedly they were protecting themselves from contracting HIV from touching gay men. Lily amazingly said at the time, "Oh, lads, you've come to do the washing up. That's great." Her alter ego, Paul O'Grady, campaigned acerbically and hilariously for elderly people, for care workers, against oppression of every kind. Isn't it time we in this country celebrated our naughty, hilarious drag queens and comics of every kind who inspire us to be a better and more generous nation?
Can I thank the Honourable Gentleman? I totally agree with him. And Paul Grayson was an incredible comic, but he also... But Paul O'Grady. But in terms of Lily Savage also, I think some of that comedy broke glass ceilings and broke boundaries in a way that certainly politicians would struggle to do. So I agree with that. I also think it shows how we need greater, more rambunctious free speech, and we need to avoid the wokery and the limitations on comedy, which I'm afraid both of them would have had no time for.
Dame Caroline Dinage.
very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to associate myself with the words of the Honourable Gentleman from Rhondda. Paul O'Grady was a great champion for animal welfare as well. Madam Deputy Speaker, the biggest cause of death for children in this country under the age of 14 is cancer. As she knows, I've been calling for a childhood cancer mission to radically change how we detect, how we treat and how we care for children with cancer. Everything from genome science for detection right the way through to 7-day-a-week play facilities in children's ward. The Health Secretary's been brilliant. He's met with me and has been really positive on this. But will the Deputy Prime Minister restate the government's support for a childhood cancer mission?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend? I certainly will. And the suffering that any child must go through when they get a condition like cancer at such an early age, difficult to believe, and the pressure on the families, incredible. So I thank her for her work. The DHSC will publish a major condition strategy to look at improving outcomes and experience for all cancer patients, but including in particular children. I can't preempt that, but I know it will draw on previous work, including submissions from the various childhood cancer charities. And again, I pay tribute to the work that they do.
Stephanie Peacock.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My 6-year-old constituent Daniel has cerebral palsy and mitochondrial disease. He has received palliative care from the Bluebell Wood Children's Hospital, who were forced to temporarily close last year due to staffing pressures. They have ongoing concerns about rising bills. Will the Deputy Prime Minister reassure Daniel's family that he will receive the palliative care he requires as and when he needs it?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for raising that very important case that she does? I don't know all the facts of it, but if she writes to me, I'm very happy to look at it. We will make sure the resourcing, but also the care is there. And if, again, as I say, if she writes to me, I'm sure we can arrange for a meeting with the relevant minister.
Wendy Morton.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the inclusion of the West Midlands as a hotspot trailblazer police force area in the antisocial behaviour action plan is really good news. Could my right honourable friend outline, though, how communities such as those in my constituency on the periphery of the West Midlands will see and feel the positive difference that this will bring, and that we won't simply see a redirecting of our valuable resources by the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner into other parts of the West Midlands?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank my right honourable friend? She raised a really important point. The antisocial behaviour action plan will help us crack down and make sure on antisocial behaviour and make sure that those responsible conduct and undergo repairs within 48 hours, things like cleaning up litter and graffiti. In terms of the West Midlands enhanced hotspot, I'm delighted they'll be getting that additional funding. She's right for the PCCs to determine the precise allocation of funding, but I'm sure she'll make her representations in the usual powerful way.
Mary Glindon.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Announcing her retirement, North Tyneside-born Sarah Hunter MBE played her final game of rugby at the opening Women's Six Nations match at Kingston Park last Saturday. Sarah is the most capped international rugby player in the world, a true professional, great ambassador for her sport and an inspiration to so many. Will the Deputy Prime Minister join with me, the whole of North Tyneside and this House in thanking Sarah for all she has achieved for the country and her beloved sport of rugby?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank the honourable lady? She's absolutely right. I pay tribute to the trailblazing record of Sarah. I had the opportunity a few years ago to watch the England female rugby team. I was blown away, and we look forward to her and them going on to bigger and better things.
Richard Fuller.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will the government require that the East West Rail Company publish a full business case before the allocation of any more taxpayers' money to the project?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you. It's a hugely important project with all sorts of opportunities, jobs, education, and a projected increase in economic output by over 100 billion by 2050. He's right that it needs all the transparency and scrutiny. I know that the first stage of the project is already in construction, on time and under budget. I'm told that the subsequent stages will go through full scrutiny as part of the planning process in a transparent way.
David Linden.
The Prime Minister has previously been on camera as saying that he didn't have any working class friends. When he's not taking his luxury helicopter rides and splashing about in his private pool, where might the Deputy Prime Minister recommend that he might befriend somebody from the working class?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm not sure I got the full extent of the question, but the reality is we're doing, and you can see that with the energy price guarantee, the free childcare and the national living wage, that we are supporting everyone in this country, particularly those on the lowest paid jobs.
And the final question, Alicia Cairns.
This week, Rutlander Andrew Osborne solo sailed 3,000 miles, taking 78 days across the Atlantic Ocean. He raised £142,000 for cardiac risk in the young after his daughter Amy died in her sleep, aged 25, being discovered by her sister the next morning. 1 in 12 children die every week of undiagnosed heart conditions. So can my right honourable friend please reassure me what we are doing to increase the diagnosis of undiagnosed heart conditions in children and young people?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend for raising this, and our heartfelt condolences go to the family of Amy, but likewise our congratulations go to Andrew on an incredible feat. The fact that 12 young people die every week from an undiagnosed heart condition is something we all want to see an end to. There's more resource going in, there's more research going in, and I'll arrange for a meeting between her and the relevant minister.
Thank you. We will shortly move to the statement, but I will pause briefly to allow a change of cast. So we proceed to the statement by the Minister of State for Immigration, Robert Jenrick.
Well, with permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to make a statement on illegal migration. 3 months ago, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, set out a comprehensive plan to tackle illegal migration. We said we would act, and we have. We've increased immigration enforcement visits to their highest levels in recent years. Since December, more than 3,500 enforcement visits have been carried out, and more than 4,000 people with no right to be here have been removed. Anglo-French cooperation is now closer than ever before and will be deepened because of the deal struck by the Prime Minister earlier this month. We've expanded our partnership with Rwanda to include the relocation of all those who pass through safe countries to make illegal and dangerous journeys to the United Kingdom. Our modern slavery reforms, introduced as part of the Nationality and Borders Act to prevent those who seek to abuse our generosity from doing so, are bearing fruit. We're tackling the backlog with our asylum system by cutting unnecessary paperwork and simplifying